This is a short introductory video to my book, The Great Deception, Dublin Monaghan Bombings, car bombings of 1974. You can check out my YouTube channel, The Troubles Come South, for a selection of videos that covers the key points from the events surrounding the bombings and looks at the key issues. More information is available from jaobrien.ie, and this playlist, which is available from my YouTube channel, The Troubles Come South, will give you 5 or 6 videos which look at the salient points, but I'm also going to refer to them very briefly in the course of this video. The single biggest omission from the many thousands of words and documentaries that have been written about the Dublin and Monaghan bombings is a total failure by all of the erudite people involved to mention the impact of the extradition situation with regard to getting suspects from Northern Ireland before the courts in Dublin. It was clearly impossible to do that in the circumstances obtaining in 1974. Certainly it might have been possible years later, but of course extradition depends on evidence. Evidence depends on interview. Tangible evidence that will satisfy the court in Belfast that the persons of interest can be extradited with a realistic chance of being prosecuted successfully in the Dublin courts. That was not possible. That information has been totally overlooked by all of the parties involved. Again, that's discussed in great detail. The other omission has been the fact that Harold Wilson, British Prime Minister, told Liam Cosgrave, Irish Taoiseach, on 2 occasions in 1974, we know who have committed the bombings and we have interned the culprits. That piece of pertinent information was not even conveyed to Patrick Cooney, Minister for Justice, or to the Garda Commissioner or any Commissioner, and it remained totally ignored and unknown for about 30 years before it became known during the Judge Barden inquiry. Political inaction of an enormous kind, again worthy of discussion, and is in the full playlist that one can look at, or indeed by reading the book you'll get the full detail there. One of the key questions which arose and hasn't been resolved, I think can be resolved now on the very strong balance of probability. That related to whether or not the Ulster Volunteer Force, the UVF, had the technical capacity to set off 3 synchronised car bombings in Dublin, or indeed if they possessed the explosives, the unique explosives that were used in Dublin and the methodology employed, whether they had the capacity to do that. Relying on the information supplied by Lieutenant Colonel George Stiles on the left and Lieutenant Colonel Nigel Wilde on the right, it is clear on the balance of probability, strong balance of probability, that the UVF didn't have the capacity either to do the synchronised bombings or possess the explosives that were used in Dublin. Monaghan, different story, typical cross-border loyalist attack into the south. Fully explained in the book and in the other videos. There may be a feeling in certain quarters that we're dealing with ancient history. But in actual fact, we are not dealing with ancient history because right now, all of 50 years later, Dublin has handed over the review of the killings to a British police force by allowing the British to conduct something called Operation Denton, operating obviously in Northern Ireland and with the assistance of other UK resources. But Dublin itself does not have currently any independent review of the information, which in my view absolutely would say that on the balance of probability it can now be determined what the actual genesis of the attacks in Dublin and Monaghan were on that day. On Friday the 17th of May 2024 I had an opportunity of doing an interview with Pat Kenny on the whole circumstances surrounding the Dublin and Monaghan attacks, and that is available in the playlist, and it is also of course discussed, the elements that are used in that is discussed in greater detail in the book. But the Pat Kenny interview is very significantly covers the events on the exact 50th anniversary of the Dublin and Monaghan killings. This is Chief Constable John Boucher, currently Chief Constable of the Police Service of Northern Ireland, formerly head of Operation Canova, which was an overarching British investigation, particularly into the activities of Steak Knife, Freddie Scappaticci. He was formerly the Chief Constable of Bedfordshire Police Force in the UK and had a distinguished career in the London Metropolitan Police. Highly experienced officer, but you really need to read the book, read the record, and listen to the video in terms of forming an informed opinion as to whether Mr. Boucher's endeavours, particularly in relation to Dublin and Monaghan, are credible. This is the Yorkshire television documentary The Hidden Hand, broadcast 9th July 1993, fully 19 years after the events of 1974, and this is the documentary that resurrected this investigation from where it had lain for the previous 19 years, and also it was done with the cooperation and participation of the Garda Síochána at that time. It's a repository of very good information. It is a documentary, so there is some license involved, but extremely well worth listening to in detail if one wants to get an overarching view of the information as it was available in 1993.